for coming out to this public meeting on possible changes in servicing and what the cost ramifications would be. I think it's a good opportunity for people to ask questions and get a good sense of what they want, and by all means, ratepayers, tell your council what you want. And that our CAO, Dwayne Evans, will give a short presentation as to what we're discussing in this meeting, and a number of you that were here this afternoon as well. It's going to be a certain amount of rehashing, but thank you for coming again.
Thanks, Vincent. So this is a presentation that contains information regarding policing. And it's important to note that this council received this presentation on October the 2nd, and it is available on the township's website. So this is information that has and continues to be publicly available. So in terms of, just to bring you up to speed in terms of where we're at, the township invited a proposal from the OPP to police the Wingham ward. The OPP proposal was presented to council here in this room in public forum on September the 25th. There was a policing servicing analysis that was undertaken by staff, and we presented it on October the 2nd, and this is the findings of that analysis. Council invited the OPP back in December to discuss in more detail the OPP billing model, and you'll see shortly why the significance of that. Today is a public information session to get your comments and your input. In terms of next steps, after we received all the information, staff will be preparing a report and we'll be giving it to council at their February 5th meeting. Council will then have approximately 4 to 6 weeks to consider the information and to make a decision. Council does need to respond to the proposal by March the 25th. So just in terms of the presentation that was made on September the 25th, through a service contract, the OPP would provide services to the Wingham ward, along with other municipal and provincial policing responsibilities, and it'd be all done under one administration. The proposal is based on a level of policing services that is required to provide adequate and effective policing as set out in Ontario Regulation 3 of 99. It is based on a defined number of uniform and administrative personnel, and that you'll see that later in the presentation. And the administration would be provided out of a renovated OPP detachment office in Wingham for the first couple of years, but it would eventually be moved to Clinton into a new OPP detachment. The OPP costing is it's a costing proposal, and it is a transitional contract of 3+ years. After the transition contract, the Wingham ward would enter what we refer to as the OPP billing model, and that uses a different cost recovery methodology than the transition contract, and I'll explain that a little bit later. On October the 2nd, as I've indicated, this was presented to council, and council directed staff to come back and look at 3 potential options. The first was OPP policing for the Wingham ward. The second was looking at maintaining the existing police service, and the third was looking at the Wingham existing service and expanding it to include the Blythe and East wards. So we'll go through each of those a little bit more detail. In terms of the transition contract that the OPP has provided, this is a slide, in terms of indicating what the full-time equivalent staff resources would be from the OPP. You'll notice that in terms of uniformed officers, it's 7.16, and then it adds a full-time administrative clerk, so it comes to 8.16 in terms of staffing complement. In comparison, so you'll see here's the OPP. In comparison, the Wingham Police Service, we currently have a staff complement of 8, and that includes 0.8 of an administrative clerk. And then this is in terms of how the OPP's positions compare to the Wingham Services positions. As you can see, there's pretty much, we're comparing apples and apples. So what we did was looked at it in terms of we looked at it from different time perspectives. We looked at it from a 1 year, we looked at it as a 3 year in terms of the entire transitional contract, and then as you'll see, it's been looked at over a 10-year time period. And in the first year, if we were to consider the OPP, as you can see, the base cost for the service would be $1.2 million. There would be, in addition to that, some one-time capital startup and facility costs. So these are things like uniforms, firearms, and there's a little bit of money in there, about $14,000, that would be money that would be needed to renovate the existing OPP facility to accommodate the additional staff that they would be acquiring. In that 1 year, there's also an equipment adjustment of $12,000. So at the end of the day, the OPP, if they were to provide the policing and in that first year of operation, would be $1.4 million. So in comparison, if we were to look at 2018, you'll see that our policing cost is $1.2 million. We do receive some revenue at the present time through grants from the province. So that brings it down to 1.125. So as you can see in the first year, 1.4 for OPP, 1.1 maintaining the existing service. The other consideration though, in terms of looking at that first year of operation, is that we will have one-time exit costs. Exit costs would be comprised of severances, payout of any bank time, possible benefits for up to a year, termination of our dispatch agreement. We have an agreement with Owen Sound, and that agreement would have to be terminated, and there is an exit clause on that. Pension top-up. So we're looking, in terms of our one-time exit costs, $450,000 to $480,000. The figure is that there's a variation there because it's going to depend on how much, for example, bank time that we would be on the hook for. So moving on, if we were to take the 1.4 that we've already discussed with respect to the OPP, and as a municipality we add on our one-time exit costs, our first year costs would be in the neighborhood of 1.9 million. In comparison, if we look at the Wingham service, it's 1.1 million. We built in some capital and some reserve of 40,000 here. And that's in terms of, we have an existing policing facility. If we're going to continue to operate the service as is, we are going to have to do an investment in that facility. There are some capital improvements that are going to be needed. So we put 40,000 in there. So in comparison, it would be, when you factor in the one-time exit cost, the cost to municipality would be 1.9. In comparison, 1.1 to maintain the existing service. So then what is done here is now we've kind of looked at it the 1 year, now we're going to break it out over the 3 years. So as you can see, the Wingham service, in terms of when you look at your operating, you build in your 40,000 in capital, you consider your revenue, you're looking at 1.1 million. In comparison, in terms of that first year, your operating is 1.2, your capital will be 206, which we've talked about, your 1 year adjustment, 1.4. So essentially you're comparing 1.1 to 1.4 for that first year. But then we also have to add in our potential exit costs, or the exit costs. So we come out to the 1.9. Moving on into year 2, if we were to continue, 1.2 million in that first year. And then what we've done here is we built in a reserve of $20,000. And the purpose for that is in terms of if we're maintaining our existing service, there are going to be capital improvements that are going to be required. Okay, so buildings, uniforms, firearms, computers, etc. Then add in our revenue. So you'll see year one would be 1.165, 1.17, 1.195 with respect to our Wingham service. In comparison, we're looking at the OPP in that same time period, and again, factoring in the exit costs, it would come in around 1.9, then it drops to 1.2, and then 1.3. So what happens then after that 3-year transitional contract? After the 3-year transitional contract, we then move into the province's OPP billing model. The billing model has 2 components or 2 categories. There's a base service and then there's the calls per service, and together those those 2 items together is what determines your cost. I won't go into what the base service includes, it is detailed there, but the key point here is that for us at the present time, the current base service cost per property, and this is provincial-wide, is $191.35. And for that $191.35, this is what you get. If we look at, that's per property. We in Wingham have a property count of 1,561. So our base cost would be approximately $300,000. Okay. But as I said, the other component to the OPP billing model is calls for service. So this is your calls for service. So these are, crime calls, provincial statutes, motor vehicle collisions. There is a tool that the OPP have developed to assist in terms of determining an estimate for our calls for service. And as you'll see, it's based on data from the last 3 years. So based on the data that we have within our existing service, and we take that data and you put it into the model, it's coming out to $446,000, okay, on an annual basis. Further to that, and depending on the decisions of the community, there may be some additional costs. So for example, some additional costs might be overtime, court security, enhancements, prisoner transport, facility, and accommodation. So I'm not going to go into those in detail. But so for example, as a community, if we want an enhancement, so the OPP are providing this service, and they provide this service to the same service to all municipalities. But as a community, if we decided we wanted a dedicated person, let's say, in our schools, and we want that person in our schools all the time, that would be an additional cost. That it could be provided, but we as a community would have to pay for it. So using the OPP billing model, and again, as I've indicated, there's 2 components. 3 components, 2, depending on how you look at it. We have our base service, which for us in the Wingham ward would be about $300,000. Calls for service, the estimate would be about $446,000, so $744,000. But then what I've done here is added on some additional, based on our overtime with our Wingham service, I've factored in $60,000 for overtime, and then revenue. Potential revenue that we may or may not receive through court security and prison transport. So the point I'm trying to make here is that in that 4th year under the OPP billing model, it goes to it's showing $800,000. So you're dropping from 1.2, 1.3 in the 3rd year down to 800. So you're seeing a decrease when you hit that 4th year. So what I've done here is I then looked at it over a 10-year time period. I did a 5-year time period and then a 10-year time period. So in terms of, and I compared the OPP service to the Wingham service, and then I want to look at the savings or the cost. So as you can see, if we were to accept the proposal, and in 2019, the service would be 1.4, bearing in mind that 450 is not factored in. But for comparison, I've used 1.4. The Wingham service for that same time period would be 1.1. So in effect, during that first year, there's a cost, additional cost to the municipality of $289. In that, if you move on to the second year of the transitional contract, it's 1.2, 1.1 for Wingham, and again, it would still cost us an additional $115,000 that we're currently paying. And you'll see in year 3, similar. What I want to point out, or what I think is of interest, is when you hit year 4. When you hit year 4, you're dropping 1.4, 1.2, 1.3, it drops to 800,000. And then, but the Wingham service during that same time period would cost us approximately 1.2 million, but you're looking at a savings of 417,000. And when you look at, when you do the comparison over a 10-year time period, this is the number that I think is relevant. Over a 10-year time period, yes, it is going to cost additional money during this time period. If council was to decide to accept the OPP service, potentially could save $2.1 million over that 10-year time frame. As I've indicated, the third option that council asked us to look at was expanding the Wingham service. So as part of expanding the Wingham service, we have to look at how many additional staff do we need and how much more capital do we need, how much more capital resources do we need. So what this is showing is what I've indicated, 7.16 and a full-time person here. So our total staff complement with OPP would be 8.16. With the Wingham service, it would be 8.0. We've already talked about that. What this is showing is that if we wanted to expand the Wingham service, we're going to require 2.5 additional staff resources. Okay? So you'll see that this is 8.0. So 8.16 OPP, 8.0 with Wingham as is. If we wanted to expand the Wingham service, 10.4 in terms of our staff complement. And you'll see how this follows through on the numbers. In addition to staff, we would need additional resources. So the Wingham service, to service the Blythe and East Wawanosh ward, would require an additional cruiser, new firearms. We'd have to outfit the officers, and we have to buy radio repeaters. So we're looking at a capital requirement of about $78,000. So from a staff's perspective, so here we have our operating costs, which is our staffing primarily. We have our operating expenditure, again comparing year 1 to year 1 to year 1 of 1.6 million. We would require $118,000 in that first year in terms of capital improvements, and that $118,000 is the 78,000 figure that I've already showed you. Plus, we would have to do some improvements and upgrades to our building in terms of our existing building. So I built in $40,000 for that sort of thing. So roof, doors, windows, whatever we need to do. So then, looking at this over a 3-year time period, comparing apples to apples, this is showing 1.66 is what it would cost for the Wingham service to provide service to Wingham, Blythe, and East Wawanosh. In year 2, 1.601, and in year 3, 1.635. And in all of these cases, and throughout the whole thing, I've applied a 2% inflation rate to accommodate for that factor. Looking at the expanded service over a 10-year time period, what this is showing is that the total for service, the total cost to provide the service of Wingham to service the Blythe would be $17 million. And if you average that out over a year, it's about 1.7 million. Okay? 1.7 million per year to service the entire municipality. This is then a comparison of the OPP compared to the Wingham ward existing compared to an expanded service. What this shows is that in the first 5 years, the cost with OPP would be 5.6 million. With the Wingham service, it would be 5.9 million. And if we were to expand the service, and when you factor in your inflation, it's coming out at 8.2 million. On an annual, if you take the 5 years and you want to look at it on an annual basis, 1.1 million per year, 1.198 per year, and 1.6 per year. So you can see in terms of that first 5 years, between these two in particular, there's not a lot of variance. Bearing in mind this one-time capital, one-time exit costs would need to be factored into this if that was the decision. So then looking at it on a per property basis, the question obviously is, as a ratepayer of municipality, what's it going to cost me? So Wingham has, like I said, a property count of 1561. OPP cost per property would be 727. For the Wingham service, maintaining status quo would be 768. And an expanded service, Wingham service per property, it works out to 659. But that 659 is based on 2,590 properties, which is the entire municipality, and it would be equally shared across the municipality. I have had a question in terms of if that was area rated, it was 1 million, I think, for Wingham and 600,000 for Blythe and East Wawanosh, if we were to take the expanded service and if we want to area rate it. In terms of Blythe and East Wawanosh, in terms of the existing situation that we have, so Blythe and East Wawanosh currently receive policing services through the OPP. The contract that we have is $322,000 on an annual basis. We have 948 properties, so on average, it's $340.66 per year. Bearing in mind that that's kind of assuming this is the policing cost is based on your assessment. So some people are going to pay more than $340, and some people are going to pay slightly less. It depends on your assessment on your property. In terms of the 5-year average, the OPP cost per property is 1.1 million, 1.198 million, 1.6, and again your one-time exit costs. If we were to look at the OPP proposal and we were to look at the cost per property over a 5-year time period, which is that transitional year plus into that first 2 years of your billing model, essentially Wingham residents would be looking at $932 per property. 823, 839, where you notice the change is when you hit the year 4. You'll notice that 900, 800, 800, and then it drops to 500. Okay? And then you'll see in that year 5, it dropped. It's still in that 500, but I factored in the inflation rate. So looking at the Wingham service, maintaining status quo, in terms of continuing on, again applying an inflation rate, Wingham Ward residents would pay $746, $749, $765, $781, and $796. So as you can see, over that same time period, the cost would rise. It continually rises, and because you keep adding on your inflation rate of 2%. If we were to look at it in the same time period and expanding the Wingham service to include Blythe and East Wawanosh, 664, 638, 651, 664, and 678. So, it's more, not as, there's increase here because of rate of inflation, but it's more level, more stable. So just in terms of concluding, this is the financial component in terms of the comparison between the OPP and the Wingham service and expanding the Wingham service to include East Wawanosh and Blythe. In addition to that, it's suggested that there are other things that need to be considered in making the decision. One is in terms of the future of the Wingham Police Facility. As I've indicated, if we decide to maintain status quo, we are going to have to do some capital investment in that facility. Another consideration is the ability to remain competitive and recruit personnel in terms of looking at what others are what other services are paying and what the compensation is that they're offering and what we're offering and our ability to attract and retain that. Another consideration are future provincial requirements and standards. The province comes down with new standards, new requirements. Those requirements would apply to the OPP, but they would equally apply to any police service in the province. So if the province comes down with a new requirement, we have to meet that same requirement as with the OPP. There's also another consideration, the OPP billing model. That is the billing model as of today. There's no guarantee that that billing model will not change positively or negatively. So we don't know what the future holds with respect to that. And the other thing is that right now, currently Wingham residents, we do receive services at the request of the Wingham services. We receive, at the request of the Wingham Police Services, we sometimes call in or need the assistance of the OPP. So they will come in and provide that service. At the present time, that service, there is no cost for that service. They come in, they do it, and vice versa. The OPP and the Wingham service work back and forth. What we don't know is in terms of right now that service is provided for free. The province could impose fees or impose costs or fees for those services that we may need down the road. So right now, we know that's today, but we don't know. The OPP could change that and decide that they are going to start billing municipalities, and it wouldn't just be billing us, it would be billing all municipalities that have their own police service, if that was the case. So that wraps that up. I will just turn it over to Vincent, and then for any questions.
Should we have introductions for all the people on stage again? It's our CAO, Dwayne Evans, that's on his knees adjusting things. Myself, Neil Vincent, Jim Campbell, Deputy Grieve, Tim Poole, Wingham Police Chief, and I'll let the OPP hold on. You want to take care of.
We have Staff Sergeant Sean McGladdery from West Region Command, myself, Sergeant Colbert Deal, Municipal Policing Bureau, Sergeant Peter Marshall, my partner, also from Municipal Policing Bureau, and Inspector Jason Unan, Detachment Commander for Huron County.
Okay, and for this question period, we would like people to proceed to the mic down in front of the stage here, mention your name and at least which ward or your municipal address so that we can record that, and I think we're open to questions. Steve?
Steve Hill, Wingham Ward. This question is for the OPP. If the Wingham Police amalgamate with the OPP for policing, will all current Wingham police officers stay in Wingham unless the officer initiates a transfer request?
That's good. Thanks for the question. No, the current Wingham police officers would stay in the municipality where they're working currently. Unless it's started by the officer who wants to go to another part of the province, they can lateral anywhere.
Will Wingham officers have more opportunities for career advancements once they become OPP officers?
In my opinion, yes. I mean, I was a municipal officer for 10 years, and one of the reasons I wanted to come to the OPP was simply because of the amount of career opportunities.
Another one for the OPP. For years, council has claimed the cost of OPP policing in Blythe and East Waminash is so low compared to Wingham because Blythe and East Waminash don't get full service from the OPP due to a low-tier contract. Can you confirm that is not true and Blythe and East Waminash are getting adequate and fair policing?
There is no such thing as a tier contract system in the OPP. Across the province, everyone receives the same policing services, which is adequate and effective.
So this is for Chief Poole. As I understand it, if we amalgamate with the OPP, our officers will be better equipped, have job security, have opportunities for career advancement, access to tech including ALPR and thermal camera-equipped search drones, and will cost the Wingham taxpayers less in the long run. Are you in favor, or any of your officers in favor of becoming OPP?
I certainly can't speak for any of the officers what they desire to do. You're 100% correct. There is more advancement within the OPP. Being a small service, there is only 2 supervisory levels, that's the sergeant and myself. Whereas anyone would have the opportunity for progression within the OPP. When it comes to myself, I retire in 2019. So probably, it's hard to say whether or not I would go to the OPP and take advancement. I think I covered your question.
Yeah, sorry, thanks for the question. Just to follow up for the chief as well, from an OPP's perspective as well. It's not an automatic that the officers would come over to the OPP. There is an application process that needs to occur. In basically a background check and ensuring that the member is in good standing.
And sorry, you did mention better equipped. Our officers are equipped with virtually the same as any frontline officer. You mentioned the ALPR. That is a very expensive piece of equipment that I don't see would benefit a municipality of this size. It is awesome out in the highway where it reads the license plates, or in the cities where it'll read the license plate and spit back right away if the vehicle is stolen or if there's a problem with it. I think that would be great for the larger services. Small service like ourselves, the officer can easily jot down the information on the vehicle and run it in a parked position.
Next question.
My name is Lisa Herndon. I'm from Wingham. My big concern about the OPP is the timing of the officers here. Like right now, we have somebody here who's pretty much 24 hours a day. How do you do that if we have OPP?
Thank you for your question. So currently the way we deploy our officers is strategically and based on analytics. We have officers that report out of 4 different locations across Huron County, one of which right now is our Wingham detachment. We move in relation to crime trends, traffic trends. So there may be times when there are a multiple number of officers up here in the Wingham area, and that's happened before. Sometimes they're in different locations across the county. And it's all based on calls for service, the severity of those calls. But if council chose to have Wingham Police Service come over to the OPP, then it would increase your numbers of police officers that are reporting from the Wingham detachment.
So for things like the high school or even the public school, because we have both the schools here, right? So we would have somebody here that was more or less designated during, say, the beginning of school day. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to understand how, if you're kind of spread out all over the county, that we're getting the same coverage that we receive right now.
Right, so in addition to the officers that we have on regular platoons, with platoon sergeant, we have additional officers including traffic officers. We have a school resource officer that services the entirety of Huron County. It does come up actually into Wingham sometimes and help when the chief is kind enough to let us, and we collaborate on on various fronts. We have an officer that delivers a program to elementary schools. So we have one that does elementary schools, one that does high schools, and so that is standard to what we would deliver even in the town of Wingham. So that wouldn't change, the level of service wouldn't change. And our officers, in addition to that, conduct specific patrols, specifically in the morning at drop-off times and pick-up times when operationally available to maintain high police visibility, to provide that safety that you want and that we want as parents. And we track those numbers, and so that it is a priority for us. But again, everything is in relation to operational demands and as they come about each day.
And things like response time. So now if we call somebody, we know at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's actually an officer here in town. How does that work with you guys?
So we certainly respond to all the calls for service that we get. And again, it is all based on the operational demands. We, as a police service, as the OPP, we don't track our response times. We will track the effectiveness of our investigations, again, those crime and traffic trends. And I mean, it depends on what is going on in the day. So for me to say with 100% certainty, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that there would be somebody in Wingham is unrealistic for me to provide that to you, because there may be something extremely serious going on where you need multiple officers. So in a regular day, yeah, yes, there would. But if something large happens, then we respond accordingly.
Just to add some clarification as to your question there, is we also conduct internal efficiency audits within our service. So all our vehicles are also equipped with mobile workstation, which are computers in our cars. So essentially they're offices on wheels. So what happens with that is our dispatch center also has what we refer to as a fleet tracker, where it knows the whereabouts of each and every vehicle. So should something happen in the community, then the closest vehicle to that call would be dispatched. And subsequently, if it needs more backup, then the closest vehicles are dispatched as well. So our dispatch center is aware at all times where every single cruiser is, and they will dispatch the closest vehicle to that incident. So.
I didn't write them down like you did, sorry. So my other question is more about the cost and so you have a 3-year model. So we do the transitional model, and then we don't really know what happens after that. Are there communities that have already gone through the transitional model and now have pricing at the end of it? Or are we kind of like your guinea pig town who are going to just start out with a 3-year transitional and then we see what happens? Or no one else has gone through this yet? There's no other community that's finalized the transitional and gone on to their next level?
There are actually communities that actually have gone through the 3-year process. The last amalgamation that we had would be Pembroke, I believe. They have currently gone through. They're currently in the billing model now. So I'd encourage, if you're looking for that information, municipalities can share that information if they wish with each other.
Okay.
I don't have that information in front of me, but it is up to municipalities to load research that information, so they have a well-educated decision. They're well-educated, to make it an informed decision on which route they wish to take.
Okay, thanks.
Next.
Jason Sheastel from Wingham. I'm just wondering, years 1 to 3, there's 7 full-time equivalents for officers. What would it be under the OPP model for years 4 to 10?
The first 3 years, which we call as the contractual hours of service period, that's 7.16 full-time equivalents. Each full-time equivalent member is responsible for 1,417 hours of service. At the end of the 3-year mark, the members would still remain here, but it would be a Huron County strength at that point, so they can move around the county as well. But you'd still have the members here within the community.
Okay, so there'd still be the 7 full-time officers for this area?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were comparing apples to apples with that decrease there, so thank you.
Next. Gary.
Good evening, gentlemen. I would met most of you this afternoon. My opinion is Wayne Raybeard. I want to come back this evening because one of our Wayne councillors is here tonight and express my opinion clearly to them. It's unfortunate Trevor's not here. Looking at the 3-year model, I don't see the significant savings. My personal opinion is that after 3 years, we're really, it's a guessing game. And I have known different disbandments that have occurred, and you know, when they got through the transition period or shortly thereafter and had to renegotiate, the call volumes were said to them, you know, your call volumes have gone up. The price is going to be different now. It's going to be increased, and it's very difficult, I think, to judge, you know, 10 years out call volumes based on the last 3 years. You know, call volumes are cyclical. They are in the fire service, they are in the ambulance service, and they are for any policing service. So, you know, I don't feel personally, and I'm not of the opinion that, you know, I strongly support the Wingham Police Service, and I strongly support and would ask my local councillor to support that decision as well. You know, others will have different opinions possibly, but I really feel the best bang for the buck is the Wingham Police Service. I've been fortunate enough to work with both services. They're both marvelous. Different occasions. Served on the Wingham Police Service, and they're good people. And I know that the last time we went through this with the OCOPS hearing in 2002, there was an abundance of people that came out to that hearing to listen and to tell the Wingham councillors clearly that they did not want this to happen. Councillor Deputy Campbell will remember that. People were lined out across the road. And I realize in these days of council trying to check and find every penny they can that this would be an area they would want to say, but it's clearly, it's not going to save the kind of money I think you want in the short term. It's actually going to cost more. I don't think that's money that you've got. And I think once it's done, it's done. It's not a decision you can back out of. You do give away power. The local council will no longer be involved in collective bargaining. We're very fortunate that the police service has been very good during negotiations to you know, keep costs down, still getting increases, but control costs any way they can because they're dedicated to the community and they're dedicated to the job that they're doing in Wingham. And I would suspect a lot of those police officers want to remain in Wingham. And so you know, that would be my opinion that they need to stay. I think it's nice to see them driving by the door every day or up the main street or bumping into them while I'm walking with my mother-in-law's, as I did with Mary Foxton the other day. And I'm not sure we're going to get that same kind of visibility. I understand what the OPP are saying, but after year 3, as you just heard, those officers may not be totally dedicated if they get called out of the community. And that can happen. The issue that the gentleman over here brought up regarding East Wallanash and Blythe, I understand from the sergeant that it is not a tiered system, but there is a difference in service in East Wallanash and Blythe. And I can't remember the number. I think it used to be like 5.1 or something policing. It's not a dedicated police force in those two communities. They are available, they're answering calls, but they're not sitting in the community waiting for calls. They are moving around, as you said. So I think that's the difference that some of the Wingham councillors might have been meeting. So I just wanted to express that. You know, both police services are wonderful, but my preference is to keep the Wingham service, and I think that's the common thing, the sense thing to do. Thank you.
Carter from Wingham. I don't want a long song and dance. I want a one-word question answer, yes or no. Will we be guaranteed to have a car on the streets of Wingham at all times? Yes or no? No other words?
No.
Thank you.
Ken Wood, Wingham. Going back on the OPP, in my former responsibilities, I felt that I could have a police officer at the high school within 1 minute at any time of the day, 24 hours a day. Would that be possible with the OPP?
Would you like a one-word answer to?
Yes.
No.
I would also say that in all my experience, I am a strong supporter of the local Wingham Police Force. They were fabulous with me. Thank you.
This question's for Mr. Poole. Can you guarantee that there will be a Wingham police car on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
If we get back to the one-word answers, it is no.
Well, that's what we're going for here.
Yeah, there's nowhere that can be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week
Can you
on the road.
Can you guarantee that Wingham police can show up at the high school within minutes notice?
If it's an
Yes or no?
emergency, yes.
Yes or no? If you can't guarantee there's going to be a car here 24 hours a day, how can you guarantee someone could be at the high school within a minute?
I can guarantee that there is a car here. I didn't say, you asked on the road. There is a car in Wingham 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether it's on the road or not is another story. They could be doing paperwork. We can get a response to the high school in any emergency within a minute or two.
Can the OPP accomplish something similar?
Well, if we open it up to more than a yes or no, I would say yes, based on, again, the availability of our officers. So we're not too far away at our Wingham detachment. If there's an officer there doing paperwork to present the same scenario when a call to high school came in that was of emergent nature, that response time would be similar to the Wingham Police Service.
Thank you.
Dave Hill, Wingham. I was just wondering, when the roads are closed and there's no OPP in town, how will they get here?
Well, thankfully, we're able to travel despite the limitations placed on the public due to road closures. We can get to where we need to be. The equipment that we have as well, of a standard cruiser, wouldn't get us to where we needed to be. We have ATVs, we have snow machines, we have large 4x4 vehicles, and other types of vehicles that can get us to where we need to be. So that doesn't, it's not a concern that I would have about not being able to get to residents.
Okay, also, who's making the ultimate decision whether we go OPP or Wingham Police?
That would be council,
Just the council?
yes.
You're not having a vote or?
That's the reason that we're having these public meetings. We want the council to be well-versed on what the residents want. And that definitely make sure your council knows how you feel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Will all the councillors be voting on this? Because there's only 2 Wingham ward councillors and there's 2 from Blythe and East Waminash. Technically, Blythe and East Waminash could vote we by a tank. And we'd have to go for it.
That it would be great if we had the Wingham Ward councillors making the decision. And as Black says, it has to be made by the full council as a council motion, followed up by the bylaw.
If the council was to hold a plebiscite or vote, would you honor the results of that?
I feel that I would.
The microphone back here.
You chose where you sat.
Dennis Scott, I am from the Blythe Ward and I am representing the Citizen newspaper. My question is about if council decides to go with the OPP. During a recent budget meeting, there was talks about where the funds would come from for the closure of the Wingham Police Force. Where would those funds come from, the $450,000 to $480,000?
That would be a question that we would throw back at the treasurer.
But would it be
would-
area rated to Wingham ratepayers?
The service is area rated, so that I would not see any change in it being, not that it would definitely be area rated.
Follow there.
Okay,
Yes, area rated? No, not area rated.
yes, it would be area rated.
Thank you very much.
To have a full-time officer in Wingham, basically 24/7 in years 4 to 10, what would the cost of that be? Because you said that the officers are available, but they'd be spread over the county, basically. But in the initial presentation, there were add-ons that if we wanted the full-time service, that could be added on. What would the cost of that be per year?
I think what you're looking at is probably the term that was enhancement that's been used. In years 4 to 10, I couldn't predict what that cost would be at this point in time. I wouldn't have those numbers in front of me either. It could be something that we couldn't, I don't know how you predict that at this point in regards to what that cost would be. And even today would be the cost of what a constable would be. Right now, the average salary of a constable would be approximately $98,000.
Okay.
Now, that's the constable salary, that's not any
Not
additional
including
costs that go
benefits
with it,
and
right? So,
other stuff on top of that.
is that- Just give me 1 second here.
The reason I'm asking, just while you're looking for this information, I live right by the high school, right beside the high school. And with the way these kids drive in their jacked up pickup trucks, if there's not the threat of an officer being close by to maybe pull them over, somebody's gonna get run over and killed. My wife has been T-boned at our corner once, and she's had 4 close calls just because the kids these days just drive like idiots. And it worries me if there's no threat of police around all the time, what's gonna happen then?
I'm gonna let the inspector answer that portion.
Okay.
But just going through my notes there, yeah, right now the average cost for like a constable position is approximately $98,000. So going with today's current rates that you look at 4 to 10 years from now, like anything else, that's going to increase. And we saw
Right.
tonight where actually the actual amounts of policing costs increase. So you'd see that with the constable salaries as well. So 4 to 10 years from now, I can tell you in year 4 exactly what it might be at that year, and then continue on. But right now, I couldn't give that answer honestly to you. So,
Okay.
in regards to your last point, I'll let the inspector answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you.
So when you're talking about specific concerns in relation to the high school, those aren't concerns that are unlike concerns that we have and address where we police now. So in addition to the officers that would be assigned to the Wingham detachment, we also have a school resource officer that takes the time when issues present themselves to be visible, to be in the school, but also to take some enforcement. We have, again, a community services officer whose primary role is elementary schools, but as he traverses through the county, that's an opportunity for enforcement. And in addition to that, we have a 4-member traffic unit with a sergeant. And so they are very focused in their enforcement. And so the public need only to provide that information to us to say there is a concern, which allows us to formulate a plan and create some enforcement action in relation to that.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, I was a little late, so some of these questions might have already been answered. I think, number one, the most important thing, I've listened to this for the last 30...
Your name first, Bill?
Oh, sorry, Bill McGrath. I've listened to this argument back and forth for the last 25 years about having OPP here. I sat on council back years ago when we went through this. And the one question keeps coming up, and I noticed it just got bypassed again here tonight by the last person that asked you. If you're even considering, and I'm talking to town council, looking at bringing OPP in here, I asked this question 20 years ago, and I never got an answer, and I'm not hearing it here tonight. What is the true cost of what you're going to give me today and what I have today? And I keep hearing from the OPP, you're going to give us a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contracts. Like years ago, it was 1 year. Now I just heard it possibly a 3-year. And I have a lot of concerns, the same as the other people. And I work out of town here, so I see OPP policing, great policing. But the one question always keeps coming up is where are the OPP when I need them? I know where the Wingham police are. We have businesses here in town. And for that reason, I don't want to see the OPP in here. Not that I don't like them, but I don't think they can do the job that our local police do. How many of these OPP are going to move to the town of Wingham? I don't know. You don't know. But my concern is, what is the policing going to cost us 5 years from now? Because we can't put our own police force back once they're gone. The guns are gone, the equipment is gone, everything is gone. What happens in that contract if, say, 3 months from now, your inspector decides we need another cruiser in Wingham? Who pays the bill? My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the town of Wingham will pay for it. The contract reflects back to us. You decide the equipment you need. There's no committee like you have a police commission here now taking care of that. But I think, honestly, that one question needs answered. We need for the exact same policing as we have here now. I respect the fact you're not going to get 24 hours, but I also understand that if I make a call here today and someone's breaking into our store downtown, or if I stupidly forget to lock the door, either the deputy chief or the chief is going to call me or one of the officers and say, Bill, you better get out and lock the door. That's not going to happen with the OPP. Okay? We have a low crime rate here now. I think we deserve to keep that. And I don't see that happening, unfortunately, with the OPP. Can you give me a 5-year contract? And a price guaranteed for that 5 years with what we have today? And it doesn't have to be yes or no, you can explain it if you want.
So when it comes to contracts, what we have right now is it's the initial contract for the OPP to, if should the municipality proceed to go ahead with the OPP. The contract that's put in place right now is a 3-year contract to accumulate a certain amount of information that's required to go into our billing model. After that 3-year contract has been completed, the municipality has the option to either maintain a contract with the OPP via Section 10 contract, which maintains your police service board, which you currently have right now, which assists and the municipality with direction, I guess you want to say, in certain objectives that the municipality has, or wishes to have with policing and addressing certain concerns. At the end of year 3, or the 3+ years, should the municipality choose not to move ahead with the contract, as it stands right now, they can choose a Section 5.1, which there is no contract, which means that the police service board will disband and you move into a position where you have a contract with the OPP. So at the end of year 3, you can choose to move into a 5-year contract. Can I tell you exactly what your costs are going to be in 5 years? Absolutely not. I can't do that. I don't know those numbers. What Mr. Evans has provided today is an idea as to where you're going to be based on information we have today. Where you're going to be in year 4, where you're going to be in year 5. And that's based on information that is gathered from your local police service on specific crimes that have taken place or calls for service that have taken place within your municipality. So I couldn't sit here and look at you and give you a number right today and say this is exactly what's going to cost you in 5 years. But what I can tell you is that at the end of the 3+ years, the contract that the municipality enters in with the OPP, should they choose to go that way, there will be the option to renew that contract for a period of 3, 4 to 5 years. I don't know if that answers your question, but I can't provide you with a solid number as to what the policing costs are going to be in 5 years, but I can tell you that you do have the option to enter into another contract at the end of the 3 years.
Yeah, I understand that. However, you are answering part of my question, that number one, at the end of 3 years, there's nothing left here. That's the biggest problem, and that's the problem I continue to see and have seen for the last 20 years. So for us to go back, or the police commission to go back in business, they would be making a bigger mistake than they are by signing the OPP today, because now they have to buy everything new again. That's where I see a major problem.
And that's a tough decision that ultimately comes down to the municipality having to make. And so.
Next question, concern?
Is the slideshow going to be accessible online? Yes, it's on.
It is on the website.
Perfect, thanks.
My name's John Brown. I live down in Belgrade. The meeting that we had before Christmas, the meeting that you had in Belgrade, you heard my concerns then about the cost of policing in general. The lady that asked about, or somebody asked about the cost in other municipalities. When I presented, I don't have my notes with me, but when I presented back before Christmas, I looked at the budgets, the financial statements of various municipalities that surrounded us. And I think to be fair, the average cost per property was somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 or $400 a property. And as you know, if I'm paying, I think it's $210 a year for OPP service. Your presentation tonight, if Wingham expands, the cost, if it's shared between East Wawanosh and Blythe, is projected to go up to $639 or $659, which means my policing service bill is going to go up $300 or $400. So I guess what I'd like to know is, okay, if the residents of Wingham want to keep the police service, that's fine. But as far as East Wawanosh and Blythe is concerned, we're going to keep OPP because the cost of Wingham is just atrocious per property.
That I hear what you're saying, things will still stay area rated, and that I don't see that there isn't any appetite that I know of in either East Wawanosh or Blythe for changing from what we currently have, so that would still be maintained. The big thing is what we do in the Wingham ward here, and for the council members that were here this afternoon and tonight, it's having, especially the Wingham ratepayers, tell us what they want.
Is it safe to assume then that expansion is off the table?
There really is no appetite for asking that question at the council table at all. Next.
Okay, this is my last question, I think. If Wingham went to the OPP model, the $450,000 exit costs, would that all be added on to the Wingham tax bill in year one, or will that be spread out over the term of the contract or longer?
So maybe I'll just, our treasurer isn't here tonight, but I can tell you that I have had discussions with her in terms of those extra costs and potentially how we may finance that. We do have some, as a municipality, we do have options available to us, but I think in fairness, that discussions between myself and the treasurer, we haven't had those discussions beyond at a staff level. But we do have some ideas, some thoughts in terms of how that could be done.
Okay, because if you add the $450,000 plus the $200,000 in capital improvements, that's $650,000 to spread between, what was it, 1,000 properties? 1,500? That's a pretty good hike on the first year. So if there's no provision in place to spread that out, people aren't going to be able to pay their taxes.
So I can tell you, just in terms of, again, at the staff level, the discussions we've had, essentially we recognize in terms of, as you indicated, you know, that all the exit costs being in that 1 year. So we've looked at, you know, in terms of spreading that out, and we've looked at, if we spread it out, how we would finance it, and in terms of, and I think you saw from the presentation in terms of when we start seeing the savings. the projected savings. And so, you know, looking at that 3 to 5 year, and then looking at that 5 to 10 year. So, it's from a, I mean, I can't speak obviously for council, but from a staff's perspective, we're not envisioning that that one-time exit cost would all be borne in that first year.
Okay, thank you.
This isn't my last question. So actually, this isn't even a question at all. You said you wanted to hear from ratepayers, so curious. I am absolutely certain that the quality of the officers will be the same. My concern is the quality of the service won't be. So as a ratepayer, I'd like to keep our police force.
Not going up, I can say so.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Sir, can I would just like to address the level of service I feel I owe it to our officers out of the 86 men and women who work out of the Huron County OPP across the 9 municipalities. A general theme I'm hearing tonight is there's a belief that the OPP are not able to effectively police the town of Wingham as it's being policed here today. We have, I believe, an excellent working relationship with the Wingham Police Service now. Chief Poole and I sit on various committees and attend various meetings and collaborate on different different models and different concerns related to the community and policing. I mean, Chief Poole is not opposed to going different places in the county, and we've gone to different places in the evenings to make presentations, and so I feel there's a fair amount of support and collaboration. But we as the OPP still police 9 municipalities. And with those 86 members, we have a strong rank of sergeants that are very effective. We have platoon constables that work day in and day out in and through your municipality. We have, and some may say they don't, but they do. And we have a crime unit of 7 members, detectives that are highly trained. And this is not a comparator, but I'm just letting you know that we work in and through your community now in collaboration with the Wingham Police Service, and we value that. We have a street crimes unit that's comprised of a detective sergeant and 4 constables that are entirely focused on drug enforcement and property-related thefts. So much so that not too long ago we executed a warrant and had a lot of stolen property recovered, not in the Wingham town proper, but outside. We have a school resource officer. We have an officer dedicated to community mobilization, mental health, who works collaboratively with hospitals. We have a community services officer. We have court officers. We have a lot of members that serve the 9 municipalities well with effective results. And so there's no doubt in my mind that type of service and that level of service, there's no doubt in my mind it wouldn't be provided to the town of Wingham proper. So again, this is not a comparator speech, but I think you need to know what we as the OPP offer, and that's just in Huron County. Our integrated service delivery model includes the enhanced resources of officers that we work with in South Bruce, in Perth County, in Middlesex, in Lambton, that have been in your community. Maybe you don't know, but they have been in your community. Our tactical responses, our aviation services, our emergency response teams, our dogs, our drones, our identification services, our forensic members. We have all of those resources that perhaps you don't know, like I said, have been in your community. And we do work, and we will continue to work despite what happens. Work well with the Wingham Police Service. But I just want to leave you with a note that we are an effective police service, and we do provide effective policing services to 9 municipalities across Huron County.
Is there anybody else that wants to bring forward a question or a concern?
Just one quick question, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, been to both sessions and the previous session, and I heard a lot of people supporting the Wingham Force. I know one of our Wingham councillors in the audience tonight. I'd like some kind of indication of how what process is going to be followed now. So anybody that's interested that wants to be at the meeting where it was discussed and a decision made, if you want to attend, they can attend. So I think this is carried on. It's taking a lot of staff time, it's taking a lot of OPP time, and you've got some very good figures now to work with, and I'd just be interested to know what the process will be.
Well, we just have to have an answer before the end of March. We have not defined exactly what date we'll be making the decision. I'm hoping the decision will be made possibly at the second council meeting in February. That is where I would prefer to have that made, and so that those that want to know and strong opinions, either way, councillors want to hear them. And that it was mentioned this afternoon about a possible plebiscite. If you have a strong opinion, and it wasn't mentioned in one of these meetings today, write it out on a piece of paper and drop it off at Town Hall. Those will be read and will be taken into consideration.
No, so just in terms of, the process started last fall, and so we've been working through this process, and certainly there's been good discussion through that. In terms of tonight, we have 2 people that are reporting comments, and we're also reporting everything. In terms of ensuring that, from a staff's perspective, that we capture the comments and your input. All of that will be summarized. Everything from this afternoon and this evening will all be summarized. In addition to the financial information that I prepared, that'll all be rolled into a report and given to council as a report with all of the information. Then, as I said, council will has, as the Reeve indicated, council has until March the 25th to make a decision. So if council, as he's indicated, in terms of your additional comments or anything like that that you want to be put into the report or to be considered as part of the report, the sooner you get it into Town Hall, the better. So we can ensure that it gets addressed. That anything that we get will be given to all council.
Not seeing anybody else coming forward with questions or concerns.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm Bill Correatis, I was just wondering, has anyone asked our officers their opinions, or is council going to ask our officers their opinions of this whole process and how they feel about the OPP costume?
I'm not sure exactly. that basically their concerns would probably be brought forward to the police commission, and that I am unaware of if there's been concerns brought to the police commission, because I do not sit on it, and nothing has been brought forward to me. Yes, it's maybe a disjointed system where you would think the Wingham Police Commission would be where the big part of this discussion would take place. I'm saying through the Municipal Act, it is given to a municipal council. So that, no, I can't say that they have been asked. That I really want to thank all the OPP for being here, the work they have done, and preparing this, that it just shows, well, Commander Unan made a statement as to pointing out a lot of the things that Huron OPP do for us. And I think it's been an education process that way to realize what all is being done. But this comes down basically to the Wingham Ward, and it's what the residents tell council that they want. There's clear decisions to be made here, and so that I will thank all the audience that were here, and especially those that stepped forward. A lot of people don't like taking a microphone, and they're maybe a little too shy, but sometimes you have to just do what your gut tells you you have to do. And so I think we might as well conclude this meeting. I think that there's a possibility of personal questions for a few minutes afterwards, but thank you for everybody attending. It is democracy, giving a chance for people to have their say. Thank you very much for tonight.
If you go onto the township website, all the councillors do have an email address that you can send us any messages also, and they can get it to council.